Welcome back to the Pride and Puck podcast. We are part of Hockey Hype Australia. This is part of the Hockey Hype Australia podcast network. You can find us at Pride Puck Pod on the socials, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter /X. This is season 2, episode number 12 overall. We've got a bit of a new format here. We've gone to a YouTube video that we'll post up on the YouTube with Pride and Puck podcast joining Hockey Hype Australia and coming under the podcast network umbrella. We're running obviously our live streams that people will be aware of from Hockey Hype Australia, but now we get to record and upload the episodes of Pride and Puck podcast. And I'm really excited about today's because we're going international for the very first time on Pride and Puck podcast. We've had expats on our show before that are now in Australia, Canadians and Americans, but we've actually got someone who lives over in Canada. Kao Lawrie, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm stoked to be time traveling into the future.
Yeah, so it is. It's Saturday over there for you, isn't it?
Yeah, Saturday afternoon, around 4 o'clock.
Yeah. So I'm in summer at the moment, and it's starting to heat up. They're predicting 30 plus degrees Celsius over here. I'm guessing it's not that warm for you over there.
But it's been a warm winter, not much snow.
You're on the Sunshine Coast of British Columbia, and it's a very small community. How small is it?
That's a great question. I live in Garden Bay, which is the end of the Sunshine Coast, and my community is only about 350 people strong. I think the entire coast is like, I don't know, 60,000 maybe. It's small because you can only get here by boat. So we're attached to the mainland, but from Vancouver, you have to take a ferry across to get to us. Or if you come from the island, you have to take a ferry across to get to us. So we're double ferried.
I couldn't imagine that. I've never been in that situation where the only access is a ferry. How often do they run?
When they run on time, they run like, from 6 a.m. until like 11 p.m., 7 days a week kind of deal. It's like every couple of hours they add extra ferries in the summer, but it gets really tough to actually get a spot on one. They sell out lots. There's usually long waits. It's somewhat problematic, but it's also like, a part of what makes the coast special is that it's hard to get to.
And Kao is a 39-year-old trans non-binary queer Canadian hockey player, which is really cool. And before we came onto the show, you're talking about spending endless amounts of summers playing street hockey and roller hockey in your neighborhood. What was that like growing up playing hockey, street hockey?
I mean, it was great because it was mostly free all the time, and there was a lot of guys in the neighborhood, and we would just set up the nets and play in the street until there was a car, and then we got rollerblades, which made hockey a lot faster. So that was pretty cool.
Was rollerblading huge over there when you were growing up? Because it was massive here in the 90s.
Yeah, it was really big, and then skateboarding kind of edged in, and then it wasn't cool to rollerblade, and I became a skateboarder. So, of a clash, but I'm a happy and proud skateboarder. So, yeah, rollerblading was great because you could do it year round. You didn't have to worry about just getting ice time.
So were you one of those rollerbladers that could drop into ramps and things like that? Because that's like my claim to fame when people talk about rollerblading or ice skating, and I'm like, oh, when I was a teenager, I was so good.
Yeah, I mean, semi-embarrassingly, there's some pictures of me jumping stairs and doing grabs and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mostly just stuck to hockey and chasing the ice cream truck around the neighborhood.
And you mentioned to me you played 1 year of rep hockey as well. What was that like? And did you feel like when you were growing up that it was playing hockey was something that you wanted to do as a career, potentially?
I mean, I always wanted to play ice hockey, but I came from a family that just wasn't able to put me in that direction. I was already doing every other sport, and I have lots of siblings. And so, and there wasn't any leagues. There were no hockey for girls when I was young. And I got to play 1 year of roller hockey with guys. I had to get special permission to be able to go, and it was pretty wild being in a league that I was the only guy. I was the only girl, and I had to get changed in mop closets and in bathroom stalls, and I was never part of the change room, so I didn't really know anyone on the team except for when we were on the bench. And I liked it because I got to play hockey, but I didn't really like the vibe. It was a different time then. And when you're the first of anything, it can be challenging. And I was the first girl in that league, so I only did 1 year with them, and then they started a female hockey league in my town, and I went to tryouts. I didn't really ice skate other than like basic, going in circles, public skates before that. And I immediately was put on a rep team, which was cool. And I got to travel around and play for that 1 year when I was 15. And then, yeah, it was hard to access a lot of the games because it was rep, but I had some cool coaches that would come and pick me up and bring me around.
And that would have made it really hard, the situation with the change rooms, because it's so much of connecting with your team is like in those environments. So not being able to have that connection, and I suppose it also it would affect your self-esteem, I'm guessing, as well, not being able to have that bond.
Yeah, I mean, definitely when I got to play on the girls team, it was different because I was included in everything. But the next year I came out, and I think as a teenager, sexuality and gender is tough. Everything as a teenager is amplified, and we didn't have the awareness or the vocabulary or the conversations that are happening now then, and so it made it challenging to navigate the change room. And I actually stopped playing after that year because I just found it too uncomfortable. But I didn't recognize that was why I stopped until I became an adult and was like, why did I stop playing hockey? Because honestly, I would have loved to have continued with it and gone to university and played hockey. I think that would have been the path that I would have chosen had it been just maybe a little gentler.
Yeah, there's so many people. We even get that over here, not with ice hockey, but just other sports as well, that kids stop playing at a certain time. And it'd be for a lot of those reasons, especially a lot of queer kids as well
Mm-hmm.
would find to get to a certain age within locker rooms and things like that they would stop playing.
Yeah.
You moved with your wife to the Sunshine Coast in 2021, and it took me by surprise when you said that you were surprised that there were 2 hockey rinks when you moved, because when people think about Canada, we just think that there's rinks everywhere.
That's somewhat accurate, but also it's a pretty small community of hockey rinks. I mean, they're old-ish, but they don't have to take carpeted stairs down into them or anything. They're legit rinks. And I just was really shocked that there was a women's league, and that there was a co-ed night, and that there's men's leagues that seem open because I play on some of them. That there was just a lot of hockey. It's really a hockey town, and we just recently got a junior team, the Coastal Tsunami, that I guess are firing up in the next year, and so that's really exciting. I think there's going to be a lot of changes on the coast, and it's going to just deepen as a hockey community.
And you're mentioning, well, you've got the TTHE tournament as well,
Yeah.
which is how we've found each other. I'm trying to think of what it's called. This tournament has everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, could you just explain to the listeners, because it's really cool, just watching your Instagram account and following it. I think it's a really cool tournament. Can you just sort of explain how that came about?
Yeah, well, I mean, getting here and falling in love with hockey, I joined the women's league, and they were chill, and I got to play. There's 4 teams that rotate, and I played on one, and then also was just always available on call for all of the others. So I ended up playing on all 4 teams and just against each other. Like, so I do double headers so, often. Um, I had just moved to a new community and I didn't know anyone, and it was a great way to connect. And so I played an enormous amount of hockey the first year and just totally fell in love with it, but was realizing that like I was the only one kind of my kind in the locker room. And I was curious, there were more people like me, more gender diverse folk who, yeah, also played hockey. And so I decided that I wanted to throw an event. I didn't know how big it was going to grow. And I wanted to invite people from all over and just create a space that for women, trans, non-binary players, that they can just come and play hockey, because ultimately that's the goal, right? And yeah, I just wanted to be really inclusive. And I set a date and I started researching inclusive hockey tournaments. And it turns out there's a couple already, which was really like magic. And I've been able to attend a couple of them. And yeah, so this tournament has everything, is in its second year. The second annual is in March, and it's grown from 4 teams to 6, but it's a giant leap in that this year we have players coming from all over Canada, the States, the island, the city, and locals. And then we had sponsors approach me and, being like, hey, I want to be part of this. And I think that sentiment really like holds for showing that the community is like open and that there's a need for creating this kind of space. Hockey is changing and it feels really good, and I'm glad to be part of it.
So the ferry is going to get a fair workout with all these teams and people coming.
Yeah, the welcome team will definitely, or the welcome package that goes out around Valentine's Day will definitely have like book your ferry in both letters. But the tournament, it's a draft tournament. And so instead of inviting teams, I'm just inviting players. And I think that's kind of part of the beauty, is that you're getting people from all over that maybe feel like they haven't been able to access hockey for a long time, or in a environment where they're not getting changed in broom closets. And it's okay to feel safe and like open about who they are, and their pronouns matter here. And, that kind of stuff like that goes a long way in creating camaraderie in a locker rooms, and it transfers onto the ice, right? It's just a better game. Yeah.
It was one of the reasons I wanted to get you on in February, because it was coming up in March, and if this podcast can do any little bit to help promote it, I'm glad. But when you started the tournament, how surprised were you when you were sort of, you found people? Oh, there's people just like me. Oh, there's another person just like me who plays hockey over there. How surprising was it for you?
I mean, representation matters. It's so important. I didn't know that there were so many players all over the world that have been feeling the same way that I have about hockey, that have had similar experiences with change rooms. Like, after stopping playing with the girls team when I was 15, I kind of came back to hockey a little bit in my 20s, and it was always like a late night men's drop in, and I would just be in my own change room. I would never know anyone, and it wasn't about building community at all, but it was about cardio. I just got to get on the ice, I got to play, and that kind of like satiated that need for hockey. But now that I've had better, now that I know what it feels like to be in a change room where you can connect, and where the premise is kindness and respect, and just like developing communication and vocabulary, and having these conversations that maybe feel uncomfortable, but it's in an environment that is created to be safe, and ultimately is just to play hockey. Yeah, that's really changed my experience for sure.
And one of the things I laughed about as well when you were telling me was the Seattle Pride tournament, and the Western Cup. And You said that you followed them on newsletters and signed up to newsletters, and then Seattle was reaching out looking for players. I did laugh because you said you replied in all caps, just so they know, and then they reached back out to you, and you met amazing people. Can you just tell us about that experience as well?
Yeah, so I was signed up for the newsletter for Seattle Pride last year, before the tournament had even happened. And I guess the Western Cup was coming up, and the Seattle team was looking to send players over to play, and they were a couple short. So they sent out in the newsletter, hey, anybody interested? And yeah, I responded in all caps. I was like, pick me, pick me, pick me. And it was really cool because they did, and I got to go, and it was my first time going to an inclusive tournament that wasn't one that I just conjured up. So it was cool to see something that's already existing and what it could be, and what just different dynamics. I mean, every tournament's different in its own way, but it was really a spectacular experience. And now I'm doing a lot of them this year. This year I'm Western Cup, Seattle Pride, and then I'm going to the Toronto Pride, and there's a Portland inclusive tournament as well. So it's growing. I'm in school in April. Otherwise, I'd probably be going to a couple more.
So when they seen your email with the all caps, they either could have thought this person is really excited or this person is really crazy.
Yeah, I mean, a little both, I guess. I'm crazy about hockey. It feels medicinal, you know. It feels like without it for so long, um, it it's like missing something that you don't know you're missing until you find it, and then you're like, oh my gosh, this feels so much better, you know. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to connecting with all of the people and the communities that surround each one of those tournaments. Is really special too, right?
Yep. Yeah, with your tournament and going to these other tournaments with Seattle Pride, etc. Were there things that you walked away from those tournaments and thought, okay, I can incorporate that into mine to make mine better?
Oh, 100%. You know, with Seattle, they do this really cool thing where they hand, I think it's the most outstanding player award, or the most outstanding player stick. And it's like a rainbow little mini hockey stick, and each team chooses someone on the opposite team after the game to present it to. And I just thought that that was such a cool way to, I don't know, celebrate players. And so that's what we're doing this year. I created an award called the MIPs, the MIPS, and it stands for Most Inclusive Player. But honestly, it could be Most Industrious Player, the most improved, inspirational, iconic, whatever. And I got a local company to sponsor getting some custom pucks made. So we've got little pucks to present to each team and every game. And I just think that that's cool, especially because a lot of people haven't been able to access hockey, and therefore they haven't been able to participate in any kind of awards, you know. And it's not for, hey, you scored the most goals, here's your trophy, or, you know. And I created the tournament in a way that there is no championship game. I really wanted to shift focus out of, like, keep it competitive where every game is like a championship game, because it's the only time they get to play that team and have that unique, like, experience on ice, that dynamic. But I didn't want to have a rivalry, and I didn't want to, like, I don't think that I think that has its place in hockey, but it doesn't on that weekend.
Yeah. And I know that you've got sponsors and photographers as well. Are they a lot of queer people or people within community, or are they people from the outside?
Community mostly, which is really spectacular. And I think that the tournament is a great way to showcase local, you know, businesses that have, and queer people that are thriving, that are, you know, able to show up to this tournament and be like, I want to participate and I want to help facilitate any way I can. That feels really good. And that's really the point of it. I mean, hockey is the number one point, but the second in line is like building community 100%, and moving somewhere where it felt almost impossible because, like I said, I live in a village of 350 residents. I was like, it's pretty small, but it's been outstanding knowing that the tournament exists, and hopefully inspirational to other queers or allies in small communities, that you don't have to live in a massive metropolitan city in order to create space and find support in the community.
And you mentioned that you fell out of love with hockey. How has being involved in, I suppose, the queer side of hockey helped you fall in love with hockey again?
It just makes it feel safe. It makes it feel like I don't have to, pretend or be careful what I say. Or, at the beginning of this season, I actually stopped playing hockey because I went and had top surgery. And so I've been off hockey for about 4.5 months, recovering, and I'm back on the ice as of a couple of weeks ago. And so it's been interesting navigating locker rooms in a new body. And I think that it's like really, it proves that the existence of the tournament is important, because it exposes people not only to things that they're not used to, but also connects people to others who are similar to them. And that, I keep saying it, but ultimately we're there to play hockey. And so all of the politics of the world and all of the awkward conversations and nuances, I think, it gives us a chance to kind of have those conversations and make those connections and have those experiences, so that it makes it more about hockey and less about, all the other stuff. Because once you're on ice, for me, it just feels like everything else fades away, and it'd be nice to start the game off like that in the change room, instead of just having to step on the ice and put helmets on to do it.
I totally agree. I was with the Southern Lights a couple of Fridays ago. I was on the ice with them and having it skate around, and everything just disappears, and you're just out on the ice. I totally agree. What's the best part about queer hockey slash double THE?
The best part. I don't know. I'd like to think that people can show up as their most authentic self, and therefore can make the deepest and closest connections. We do put a lot of armor and protection on to play the game, but I would like to think that if you're in a community that you already know that queer and gender diverse folk are welcome and encouraged, then you don't have to navigate all of the other stuff. And you can just be like, hey, I'm Kao. I'm a queer, trans, non-binary hockey player. Like, let's hang out.
Yep. And what have you seen from other people, whether or not they've just arrived at your tournament, haven't played hockey for years? What have you seen from other queer people?
I mean, I have a player who last year came as a spectator, who's trans and who has wanted to play hockey their entire life, but it didn't feel like it was accessible. And they went and got all the gear and they started taking lessons. And this year they are playing their very first game ever. And it's like being told about stories like that is like quite special. And it is very motivating to continue to like work towards this inclusive change of hockey for sure.
That is so awesome. I always think that if you can help one person when you're doing anything, I think you've done your job. And I'm guessing that you've helped a lot of people with this tournament as well. But just that story there, it's really powerful.
Yeah. It was an emotional read when I got the message, because they were very open with sharing that, and I was like, wow, that's big. And like, who knows who else? That's the thing, is you don't know who you're affecting or how, right? All you can do is show up and try to do the best that you can, and sometimes we're all gonna fumble with vocabulary and pronouns and reading situations, certain ways in the change room. But I think as long as we try, like, that's all that really matters, right?
Yeah. What's your proudest moment that you've had, either within queer hockey as a whole, but with your tournament especially?
I mean, with the tournament, getting that message from that player was like pretty spectacular. Just knowing that people are flying here is also like a bit mind-boggling. That they're making this big effort to come such far distance to be part of something that was just an idea that I had and has grown into this really beautiful thing. One of my proudest moments, I think, in queer hockey for myself was playing in Seattle Pride last year. I got chosen to play in the All-Star game, which they do on the Sunday. And 2 players from every team, I think there was 16 teams last year, get chosen, and then they go and they play in this big marquee game, and they have a full brass band that plays in the stands between puck drops. And yeah, I don't know that, they turn off the lights and they announce you come onto the ice, and it just felt really special and a little surreal to be part of that, for sure.
I was just going to say, it's almost like a college experience, isn't it, with the brass band?
Yeah, I'm getting my college experience. It's just at 39.
Do you think, with so much going on with the NHL, and whenever I see something to do with pride tape or jerseys and special nights in the NHL, and I just shake my head because it seems so backwards. Do you think grassroots level things, it could be even this podcast and your tournaments, do you think they're actually helping shift the culture from hockey, from grassroots to NHL?
Definitely, 100%. I mean, they had NHL players at the Seattle tournament, which was really cool. And I think Pride Tape is so powerful. I always make that Pride Tape available in all of the locker rooms at the tournament, if people feel like that's something that they want to do. It's definitely up to them, but pretty much everyone does. I think it's just a really cool way to, yeah, to showcase that, like, you're queer, or you're an ally, or you like rainbows. I mean, all 3 work, um, and are just as effective, you know?
So you're quite busy this year. So you've got Western Cup in Calgary, Toronto Pride hockey tournament, Dirty Birds tourney in Portland, and of course you've had written here Seattle Pride. Is there an opportunity for you in the future to make a trip to Australia
It's
and join queer hockey here?
Yeah, it's on the horizon. I actually, one of my best friends live there. They used to live here. Tim and Becky, shout out. They moved back to Australia with baby Rivy, and they're doing their thing over there. So I've promised that I will come and visit soon, and when I do so, I'll make sure that it's during season, because yeah, I would love the opportunity to check out. It seems actually very strange to me to play hockey in Australia, because I traveled to Australia. I lived there for a year right out of high school. I did the thing. I showed up. I bought a surfboard and a fire staff, and I just like in a tent. And that was my life for a year. And I was a woofer. So I worked on farms all over. I landed in Cairns, went down the Gold Coast, underneath over to Perth, and up to Darwin. So I tootled around, and it's very hot everywhere. So it's kind of wild to think about playing hockey in such a warm place. But yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah, a lot of people say that hockey's been here for over 100 years, and people don't realize. And we have got 2 national leagues here, and we get players from Canada everywhere, and even those players, they're surprised that hockey's here. So you're not alone. But you did survive the crocodiles while you're here, so that's a good thing.
I did, yeah. I got bit by a water python when I was there. It was a good time.
Well, it'd be good if you ever head down here. It'd be good to catch up with you, and then we won't have the time lag and time difference that we've got over this.
Absolutely. I look forward to it, Andrew.
Before I let you go, is there anything you want to plug? Obviously, you got the tournament, but anything else that you want to plug or let the listeners know about?
No, I think all of the tournaments out there. There's so many. I encourage people to Google what's going on in their community, because there might be something not too far away that they can participate in and connect with, and maybe collaborate with. And um, even just throwing the tournament here, I've wanted to reach out to all of these different businesses and sponsorships, and that's been really cool. But also, I've connected with the drag community here, and I actually have some drag performers that are going to be doing live commentary of a couple of the marquee games, just for fun, because I wanted to include them, and that's what we came up with. And I think that it's going to be super cool, especially because a couple of them are like, I don't know anything about hockey. And I'm like, that's going to be so perfect. Here's a vocab list and a couple of rules, and just run with it. So, many hands make quick work. And I think that just continues on building community. Now it's like, oh, now this community wants to join, and the Pride Society wants to get involved because we're doing a dance on the Saturday night. And oh, the brewery wants to get involved because we're having a bar. And like, it's a really cool way to meet people in your community. Yeah, I'm very grateful.
Yeah, I totally agree. Just through this podcast, I've met so many people within community that I wasn't able to connect with. I'm sort of similar to you. I live in a coastal town here that's quite small and isolated. So starting this podcast, I've met a lot of people, and now looking to play hockey myself with the Southern Lights. So it's really cool how you can connect, and it just snowballs from there.
Mm.
Where can they find you? Where can they find you or your tournament online, the socials? Just let them know your handles.
Yeah, so it's the tournament with 2 T's for this tournament has everything. That's my Instagram thing. So at the tournament, I think is what it is. I might have to check. The social media is new to me. I haven't been on social media in years. And then last year I did the tournament kind of flying under the radar because I was nervous about how the community was going to take it. And I wanted to protect the players. And it was so abundantly obvious that the community wanted to celebrate the tournament. And social media allowed the people to connect with photos and information and each other. And so I started the Instagram page. And yeah, it's been kind of fun. I've been trying to figure out how to make all these reels, and it's a different time, but hopefully
That's cool.
You can just add it on with the magic of podcast, and people can click.
Yeah. No, I love following the page. It's really cool. I share as much as I can. Kao Lawrie, thank you for coming on the podcast and the show. The first international guest that Pride and Puck podcast has had, so you can put that on your resume when this podcast takes off.
I'll put it in caps.
Yeah, all caps. That's right. But thank you for coming on. I really appreciate you giving up your time. I'll put some links and stuff in the podcast notes for your tournament and things like that as well, so people can find it. But thank you for coming on. And when you're down under, I'll make sure that we catch up.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Andrew. And I really, really appreciate what you're making out there. That is needed.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Have a great night.
Bye.
Bye.